Fallout 3 might be a tad old, but its influence on gaming is undeniable. Is there anything you can change to make this gigantic open-world wasteland exploring adventure a bit smoother in something like an Intel Atom portable console? Or can we reduce the graphics enough to even get this going on something as weak as a tiny Intel compute stick? Welcome to the LowSpecGamer, the show where I explore what kind of tweaks are possible in a game to take the graphics to the lowest possible and get the best performance in some really low-end systems. Let's begin. Thank you to Jonathan Eldringham for providing the configuration files and mods needed so I can get started on this video. Fallout 3 is a 2008 game running on the Gamebryo engine, the same engine that runs Elder Scrolls Oblivion. Minimum settings mention a 2.4 GHz Intel Pentium 4 and an NVIDIA GeForce 6800, which is curiously the same NVIDIA GPU on the minimum requirements for Mass Effect 2. Since these requirements are a bit old for modern-ish standards, I once again decided to go with the trusty Intel Atom. Low-end, power-efficient CPUs with an integrated Intel HD, some of my favorite devices to use on this channel. I guess that gives children of the Atom an entirely different meaning.
Soon, Atom's glory will be upon us. Very soon.
For the first test, I went for all the lowest settings allowed by the game launcher as usual. And before you go to the comments to point out how an NVIDIA GPU is listed on my settings, I have to make a pause and talk about launch issues. I usually like to focus on performance and graphics for these videos, and I avoid talking about launch errors that may pop up since a surprising amount of people already think that my inbox is the place to go for free game tech support when anything goes wrong with their game. But in this particular instance, the game was impossible to start on all Intel HD devices I tried, and it needed a couple of fixes. First, you can run the exe on this mod link in the description after installing your game, so it can run without games for Windows Live installed on your system. But even with that, the game crashes if it detects an Intel HD GPU. So, this mod includes a nifty DLL that you can copy to your game's installation directory to trick the game into believing you have an NVIDIA card so it can launch. Okay, enough error fixing, we can finally test. I went first for the GPD Win handheld PC console using a modern Intel Atom X7 C8700, which I reviewed and tested on its own separate video. Before I started, I changed the resolution to 960 by 544, a custom resolution I have added on this device on the Intel control panel. If you own a GPD Win, it is worth noting that the screen is rotated, so you have to add the resolution with the width and height inverted. Now, I have noticed that on the GPD's screen, it is virtually impossible to notice the difference between this resolution and 720. There's a nice gain in performance. On this device I was getting more than 50 FPS on calm, open areas and closer to 35 to 40 on areas with a lot of clutter and action and combat. So I can safely say that if you're looking for a large RPG to play while you're in the bus, this is very much on the top of my recommended list for the moment. But what about the Intel Compute Stick, the much weaker C3735F tiny computer that I reviewed and tested here? For this one, I reduced the resolution to 800 by 600 and discovered that surprisingly this game was pulling between 25 to 30 in some open areas and better during some combat. You could argue that this tiny thing can play Fallout 3 just like this. It is truly impressive how technology has advanced in such a short time. Right. But you want more. What is there for you to do to get more performance on this game? We're going to start with the configuration files. This is located in your Documents folder, My Games, Fallout 3. Here you should find two files, and we're going to start with fallout.ini. My final configuration files are in the description, but let me tell you what some of the most interesting variables do. First is a variable that is usually not pressing at all. Before disabling options, you can add disable all core 1. As you probably know, this game can get a bit crazy when fighting, and that means all sort of decals and limbs exploding all over the place. Well, this gets rid of that, which means less effects, particles, and decals. Do specular past 0 can disable the shiny effect applied on some textures. And now, let me talk about grass. I mean grass size controls the density of grass in this game. Lowest numbers creates lush and dense grass, while a value as high as 140 makes grass way more sparse. F grass wind magnitude max and min control how strong the wind affects the grass. Bigger values make more dynamic grass, but making it 0 creates still non-movable grass. And if you do not like grass at all, you can use B draw shader grass 0 to just get rid of the whole thing completely. Finally, F sun glare size and F sun base size control the size of the sun and the glare around it. If you put them both to 0, you get rid of the sun altogether. That's it for Fallout.ini. Let's move to FalloutPrefs.ini. If you have shadows enabled, you can use iShadow Map Resolution to control the resolution of the shadows. It has to be multiples of 8, so the lowest shadow you can get is this confusing 8-pixel shadow. Actor Shadow Count int and ext controls the number of NPC shadows on interiors and exteriors. But if that is too much shadows for you, you can just use B draw shadow 0 to get rid of shadows completely. iText MIP Map Skip is very interesting. This controls the quality of the textures, and it works on reverse. The lower the number, the better the textures. What you can do is increase this thing as high as 7 for some really downgraded graphics. Now we're talking! iMultisample is the level of anti-aliasing, and iMax anisotropy is the level of the anisotropic filtering. You can add fdecal LOD2 and umax decals to control the number of decals like bullet holes are shown in game. Making it 0 will simply disable most decals. iMax skin decals per frame 0 will disable decals that are drawn on characters' skin. If you have reflections enabled, you can control the resolution using iWater reflect width and height. It has to be a multiple of 8, and just putting 8 causes this weird indistinguishable reflection. And finally, fblock load distance low and f3 load distance control the render distance of trees and buildings. Reducing them to 0 will cause buildings and some trees to not render in the distance until you are significantly closer to them. But we are not done. If you have ballow console to 1 in your Fallout.ini file, you can press the tilde button, which is usually next to the 1 in your keyboard, to open the console, and there are a couple of useful commands we can use here. If you want to run several commands rather than have to apply each one separately every time you play, you can go to the installation directory of the game and create a commands.txt file and put the commands there. This can then be executed in-game by typing batcommands.txt in the console. My command.txt file is also in the description. These two commands remove a bunch of particles from the game. This command removes some of the expressions used by NPCs. This command removes the sky, the entire sky, and you thought removing the sun was extreme. Thankfully, there is not any ghosting like there was for Half-Life 2. And this command makes water invisible, although be warned that it will come right back if you interact with it. With all that, I set out to see what this pair of Intel Atoms could do with super low graphics. Welcome to Fallout 3 as you have never seen it before. As you can see, we accomplished pretty much 60 FPS on some areas. We're about to see how it goes outside. So, as I had perfectly explained in the past, I do not believe this machine needs to go to these extremes to achieve playing this game comfortably. And as you can see, it very much can achieve 60 FPS consistently with this graphics. Now, the real question is, how will the Intel stick do? Now, it can be frustratingly hard to correctly benchmark this game. The game behaves sometimes in very inconsistent ways, which makes it hard to average. However, it is undeniable that I'm seeing some better performance in this extremely limited device. It's also pretty interesting to note that this game allows you to go this much down if you really need it. This smart was one of the places that was doing best on this device, and now it's even doing better, going as close as 60 FPS, ouch, from time to time. It is fair to note that performance drops while using VATs for some reason, but since that doesn't require that much user input, it's fine, it works. Wow, I really do very poor damage. The color of the skin of some of the enemies is completely broken, as you can notice at this up-close shot, but the game performs just fine, I guess. This is draw distant though. Not sure if I would recommend going this low for a game that requires so much shooting. Also, the complete elimination of gore, which is what I'm trying to test if I don't die, actually causes the game not to slow down a lot during this very intense fighting moments. I mean, I don't know, you could really argue that it's very playable. Until you die, that is. Hey, but it works! That is all for this video. Thank you to the people who donate in Patreon to make these videos possible, as always.